All right, Shaun, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Happy to join you.
Yeah, glad to have you here today. Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to hand the mic over to you here to share a little bit about your background. But you are, I feel like, someone to really know in this space. You are so well connected, and you've also created an incredible organization, which we're going to talk more about today. That's really making an impact for operational leaders in the RIA space. And what I love about it is it comes from such a genuine place of really for you wanting to make a difference, and you've done so much of that. And also just congratulations to I know Insider Information recently gave you an award earlier this year too. I feel like one of many awards that you've received. So, anyways, I don't want to steal your thunder. I hand it over to you. Share us a little bit more about your background, and HIFON is an organization, and I think you said it was founded in 2010. Am I remembering that right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
it's been around for a little while, but I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, no problem. So, I'll just kind of start the 22 years in the industry started by being a college student that didn't know what he wanted to do other than go to New York City.
Yes.
And I ended up studying marketing, and I actually could not find a job in marketing. And so I ended up with an insurance company and did that in New York City, tried to sell insurance, which was very challenging for me. Only spent a little over a year there. And when I ended up back in Ohio, the options were either go back into marketing, some kind of entry level position, or use that year of experience in this quote unquote financial services industry
Yes.
to go a little bit further. And that's what happened. So started with an RIA firm that I continue to be with to this day, which is wonderful. Have grown a ton, and not only my own role, but the firm has grown and has given me just so many opportunities to kind of
Mm.
explore what's possible in this industry. So always having been on the operations side for me in a small firm in those early days, single digit count, really was a kind of exploration of, all right, how do you learn the operation side and how do you develop it within an RIA? And so over those first few years, it was just challenging because you kind of felt like you were alone. You were figuring this out. You didn't have a lot of resources to go to or places to pull information from compared to, let's say, what there is today.
Yep.
So within a few years, I had been able to go to a few events and really kind of fell in love with that concept of, oh, there are other people out here that are in a similar role, doing a
Yep.
similar job, and face the similar challenges, understand the issues that I was facing. And so 2, 3 years of doing that kind of led me to a different feeling, which was leaving these events and being a little bit flustered with,
Mm.
do I really have to wait another year to come back to the same event to have these great roundtable type conversations where you rub shoulders with people that are in this type of role? And so that's really what kind of led to me thinking about how do I interact with these ops folks? It seemed like every RA had somebody that was responsible for the back office, for the things that were non-advisor, non-planning, non-investment, and wanting to spend more time with these people. I had kind of taken a page from the playbook of one of our advisors that was in the study group.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, well, that's great. I'll just join one of the industry study groups that is
Right.
focused on operations because I'm sure that's where all these people hang out all the time,
Right.
right? And seemed like a good idea. Today probably sounds fairly common,
Yeah.
but at the time, I couldn't find anything. I was scouring the internet. I was talking to anybody and everybody that I knew in the industry asking, do you know of an ops focused study group?
Mm.
And just kept coming up short. So I'm sure I wasn't the first one to hit this maybe fork in the road, but at the time, maybe was one of the first to say, well, I'm going to start a group. And so I did reach out to a handful of those folks that I had traded business cards with in those meetings over those couple of years. And maybe once in a while you would reach out to them and ask a question, right? It's a one-off question. It's just one person at a time. So it wasn't really efficient maybe to get
Mhm.
a broad swath. Like if you're looking for a review of a company or a document to get started, it's just nicer to have resources where you can get that from a bunch of people, right? If you can
Yeah.
ask a bunch versus just one. And so that was that concept of, all right, if I've got 5 other people that I can kind of reach out to and talk to on a
Yeah.
regular basis, maybe they'll be interested in having a regular conversation. So that study group concept was really the genesis of how the group began.
So tell me though, because it's hard to be able to create community, right? Sometimes things can get going, there can be a lot of momentum, but you've kept this going for some time. How did you initially kind of get that? like, that's that push it off the mountain to get it going and then keep that
Yeah.
snowball rolling, right? I mean, that's it's much easier said than done.
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't like I had this perfect vision of what the group was going to become. It
Right.
was more of a admittedly selfish motive from the beginning. I knew I needed help. I knew I wanted to learn. I knew that I was excited about um, connecting with folks in a way that like I could reach out to them. They were my resource. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was, hey, I'm going to keep this going. I'm going to be the one that's organizing it. I'm going to take action. I'm going to set up the calls. I'm going to make sure this happens. If you guys show up,
Mhm.
then I felt like that was a win for me. And what I didn't anticipate as much um, is that thankfully they felt the same way. And so, really, by just keeping that going, keeping these regular
Yes.
monthly meetings going, people started asking me, hey, I've met others that when I've told them about this group that's helped me, they've shown interest. Can we invite them to join us as well? Do you mind if this gets bigger? And I said, no, I feel like a little bit of the more the merrier.
Yeah.
So it became just that was the community part where I didn't even think of it as a network or as a community. It just kind of became that because we were open to others joining us and
Mhm.
we were clear on what our kind of purpose was and who could come to be in a role within an RIA was kind of
Mhm.
that minimum entry point.
Mhm.
And it wasn't vendors, it wasn't custodians, it wasn't consultants, right? Those folks over time maybe had interest in joining, but we've kept it to the membership.
Right.
You're talking with your peers because those are the ones that are in a similar role,
Yep.
know the things that you're facing, and can answer the question, here's how we do it in our firm. That's
Mhm.
really what the original group was intended to do is give you this kind of peer-to-peer feedback. How do you guys do it? How do you
Yeah.
deal with this problem? How do you solve this issue? So over time, that snowballed. I don't know that I did anything other than just I kept having the meetings.
Do the
People asked
framework.
for things like yeah, and
Yeah.
that that seemed to work.
So not to get into the weeds, but to get into the weeds, I'd love to hear a little bit more. How did you create that framework within that conversation to be able to help foster that, right? Did somebody give a presentation and there was feedback? Was it everyone would just come? How did that kind of conversation, how did you facilitate that?
So it was. I tried to mirror it like those conferences that I went to, and basically in a virtual format. So in 2010, the concept of a bunch of virtual meetings wasn't really a normal thing. So it was a little foreign, you could say, to us. But
Right.
conceptually, if you told someone, "Hey, have you been to a conference?" Yes. Have you sat in a roundtable type session?
Yes.
Most of them said yes.
Hmm.
There's usually a facilitator, which was
Yep.
essentially the role that I was taking. And that facilitator basically says, kind of goes around the room, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your firm, and
Yep.
what are you facing today? To me, those were the best ones where they just said, what is it that is kind of in your mind? What is bothering you? What has been challenging? What's hard for you right now? Like this group might be able to help you. You could
Hmm.
apply this in any industry, right? You could take
Yep.
anybody's job and connect engineers. You could connect retail sales folks. I mean, you could do this really anywhere you wanted to. We happen to be in financial services. We have to be in financial planning firms. We have to be in RIAs. We kind of narrowed it down and said, all right, if we
Yes.
get peers together and just facilitate that conversation, that's how I ran it.
Yeah.
And when the group got to maybe about 20, a little over 20 folks, I was on a call where it was just kind of unwieldy. It was all over the place, right? You had people
Yes.
talking over each other, and it was those early days of understanding how do you manage a virtual group. We weren't even
Yes.
doing video calls; it was just a conference call, and it was kind of a mess. And so, in a good way, that was a good experience where I felt like, okay, that call felt like a failure, but it was a
Hmm.
little bit of a springboard for me to say, I just need to break this up into a couple groups. And
Hmm.
once I broke it up into groups, as it grew, I knew I got to keep this in the single digits, just like a round table, right? If you had 25 people sitting at one big table and they all tried to talk, it could get challenging. But keeping it fairly small, still to this day, with hundreds of members, we still have a uh, small single digit
Yep.
um, community, you could say, on each call that makes
Mhm.
it very easy to interact with people on a kind of one-to-one basis.
Oh my gosh. So I just want to swing back. Hundreds of members. So it's
A few,
clearly,
yeah.
yeah, you really hit a pain point, right? It was something that you tapped into. You created this intentionally, unintentionally, and unintentionally, where this community started to grow. So I know that you have this focus group component, but if you want to kind of call it that, I don't know if that's the internal word
Mhm.
that's utilized, but and I know there's other facets to it as well. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that? Because I'm sure these sort of grew over time of needs that members had. So what does it look like today if we're, fast forward?
Yeah. So it probably was within the first couple of years that I realized there was way more interest than I had expected. And I got excited about kind of just, I don't want to say it was a giving back initially thought, right? It became
Yep.
like, hey, this could be something bigger than I originally anticipated. I have to make a decision. Do I want to continue to run this or not?
Mhm.
And pretty quickly, it just became about, hey, I want everyone else to succeed. Like I've succeeded a ton from it. I'm going to benefit the most by talking to every new member that comes in. I still reach out and say, hey, I'd love to meet you, have a face to face. I may not be in your small group each month, but I want you to know who I am.
Mhm.
And this is to me, it's a small organization because there's not a lot of other people other than me kind of running it. So I have help, but I want to make sure people know, this intention from the beginning was to have this one-to-one kind of peer community. These days it feels like I'm throwing, a party of sorts, and I'm the host, and so I
Yeah.
welcome people in,
Yep.
kind of show them around, so to speak, and then basically say, hey, go have a good time talking to these people. I think I've put you in the right room, or I've at least created the room for you to be with your peers.
So,
And some people love it right away and say, this is great, this is perfect, this is what I was looking for.
yeah.
And they can't imagine creating this on their own, which is fine, because I kind of point back and say, I couldn't imagine it either. It just, I don't want to say it just happened, but my, the way that it evolved, you could say, over the 14 years is, as people asked for things, I just did my best to first tell them, honestly, it's just me. So if I can't do this, if this is beyond the capacity of what I'm doing on my nights and weekends,
Yep.
I'm going to let you know. I'm going to be straightforward. But then I also said, I'm going to do what I can to deliver on what you're asking for. So a couple of those things would be like extra calls. The normal calls are ops focused, so kind
Yep.
of general running a business, a lot of technology, handful of things on compliance. There's
Yep.
marketing items. There are HR things. There are all kinds of topics that we cover. Pretty much everything outside of being an advisor, planning
Yes.
and investments. Like we don't
Yes.
don't really touch that stuff.
Mhm.
But we've had groups, smaller groups, kind of pop up where people have said, really interested in compliance stuff, and so we started a separate compliance call. Marketing came up as well. Even enough users around CRM. There's a group that focuses on Salesforce as a topic.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
subgroups have been a new addition.
Yeah.
We've added the vendors and the consultants, the custodians that have all kind of jumped in and said, hey, we'd love to be connected. We've done that by having private webinars put
Mhm.
on by those folks, such as yourself. I know you did
Yes.
one. You did
Yes.
one for us as well. Um, we've done some different things that have basically gotten information that people might be looking for into people's hands easier. So sharing documents or templates that people have, we have a way that they can kind of put those out there, post them to the group, and then everyone can access those. We collect firm data. So when somebody joins the group, they fill out a little survey. It basically
Yep.
puts that info into a spreadsheet, and there's access so that if you're looking for
That.
firms that might have a particular system and maybe have multi-location and certain number of users, you
Mhm.
can dwindle that down in this data sheet and go directly to those folks. So it can help you with some of your searches. That to me has been
Fantastic.
one of those kind of hidden gems that I've
Yes.
used at my firm, and I try to encourage others to use as well. So that's an example of a lot of the benefits that people get by joining is they get access to these different components, and they kind of serve a different purpose depending on what somebody's looking for.
Oh my goodness, I love that. It's so fun to hear you talk about it too, just how it's naturally unfolded. And I also really appreciate that data component because it's very difficult to find apples to apples, especially within the
Yeah.
art community. You can Google things, financial services, sort of baseline standards, but it's not, you really have to get sort of uh, that inside data and then that further look under the hood to really be able to unpack things. So, which sounds like you all have been doing. So, do you mind sharing a little bit more? You talked at the beginning about kind of you put together who would show up for the group, right? Uh,
Hmm.
operations leader and the RIA space. Has it naturally over time sort of been a certain size of firm or a certain pocket of the United States, or common like growth challenges, maybe AUM size, or is it just kind of a smattering of different folks just that really need that community?
Definitely the latter, for sure. I mean, I was curious about that myself.
Yeah.
A couple of times I've taken everyone's location and mapped it out, and you basically just see like a nice, um, almost equal setting of dots across the U.S.
Mhm.
We've hit Alaska, we haven't hit Hawaii yet, so there's you're getting a little bit of reach here. We've
Yeah.
actually had a few international firms join,
Right.
which has surprised me. I usually have a conversation with them, and
Yeah.
I think we're at three international firms right now. They basically do business in their country, but operate in a similar fashion to an RIA. So I have a conversation with them saying, if you're using the same technology, if you're encountering the same challenges and issues, if you think this is valuable,
Yep.
then come join us and see how it goes. So it's probably not for everyone. Certainly, we know that some people even join and say, yeah, I don't know if this is A, if I have time for this, or B, if it's the way that I like to solve problems or talk through things with others. And that's okay. I mean, there are other communities, there are other options these days.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great thing. Like, find what works for you.
Yep.
Um, Out of, pick your count, the tens of thousands of investment advisors that are out there. Um, you could say that's the market of potentially who could be in a group like this. And the fact
Yep.
that we've got just shy of 300 firms that are interested in this type of community, I'm
Mhm.
thrilled with that. I'm happy with that. Can it
Uh,
double?
yep.
Probably, absolutely. Maybe if, just putting out a message like this can help more people hear about it and see if it's something that would benefit them.
Mhm.
But like I said earlier, the mission is I want to help people succeed in their roles. I want their firms to do well. I want the RIA industry to do well. And so that's kind of the purpose at this point, is putting something together that works. And I've even kind of admitted to myself, if someday this is not valuable to people anymore, then it may not exist, or it may look different in the future. Even the AI question, can you get these questions answered by just using AI these days? Right
Right.
now, I think the answer is no, because from a scenario standpoint, I don't know that the reviews and the data that it would pull from is necessarily out there.
Mhm.
So we're probably going to try to take some of the data that we've collected and do something with that. But for right now, I do think it's still unique in terms of what it provides.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun to hear about. I did want to ask, for those that are interested in joining, what is kind of the baseline commitment? Is it a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting? What's kind of, if you were looking at I want to at least get kind of the basic benefits, what would that look like from a time investment?
Yeah, so I would say it's what they want it to be. So if you ask me, well, what is the average user experience? Um, Becoming a member has the benefits that I talked about earlier. The biggest one being the monthly call. There's a monthly call.
Mhm.
People have said, "I'm sorry, I don't know that I can make it to everyone." I say that's okay. This is a group this is available to you. You're going to be invited, and so if you're able to participate, certainly you will benefit more from that. We have a
Mhm.
discussion board. A lot of activity on there. Kind of same thing. If people have the capacity to maybe respond to others, like, that's how the discussion board works. I'm
Yep.
not the expert that's answering every question, so it's the group, it's the peers that are actually the ones who are saying, well, here's how that's working for me, or here's how we're doing that in our firm. So from a commitment standpoint, it's almost how active do they want to be in the community. And we
Mhm.
get some folks on one end of the spectrum. I've had people say, this is insurance. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but I know if there's a community there that I need to ask a question to, I'll go to it. And then the other end of the spectrum, you've got people that on a weekly basis are helping answer questions. They're putting out some of their own, and that is, I think, phenomenal. It's really up to the user to depend on how much they want to use it. It's also a firm membership, so I always talk to people about, like, this is not just for you, the ops person that
Right.
could be newer in their role,
Mhm.
or it could be the COO, and you do have plenty
A
of
wide
ops roles
variety. Yep.
in between. So
Trust
to answer
me.
your question from before, it's not a certain size, it's
Mhm.
not a certain location,
Yep.
it's not certain technology,
It'll,
it's
yep.
not even a certain role. It really comes down to almost the person. Does the person who hears about this say, yeah, I like that. I would benefit from that. I want to talk to people about this stuff. I want to have a group to ask questions to. And if they want to engage, it's really up to them for how much they would like to.
Oh my goodness, that's so valuable. And like I said, when we started, love that it also just came from a like a place of just giving back and being genuine and solving a problem. And you can just see that through the narrative, as it's kind of grown into
Hmm. Hmm.
itself. So if folks want to learn more, where would they go? Kind of, and is there anything as we look ahead that they should sort of expect, in 2025 as we're looking at that as well?
Sure. Well, hyphen.org, so HIFON.org is our website, and that's where you find out pretty much everything, hopefully, that I shared here today is on there, and it's easier to sometimes digest it when you can read through it. There's a little video. And we are working on a refresh of our website for 2025. So that should be coming out shortly, and looking forward to that. Again, no major changes, so everything that I described will still be there. But wanted to share that as a kind of what's on the horizon for us.
Oh my goodness. Shaun, thank you so much. Thank you for just giving back to the community on top of your day job, right? And
Yeah,
everything else,
yeah,
being able to support people, and really like leaning with that first, right? Wanting to be able to add value. So just appreciate the work that you do. And thank you again for your time today and for sharing more.
for sure. Thanks for having me, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.